in Meisner.
Okay. Now we're live. And we're on time, so promises made.
How could it still be 6:59:28?
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's still 59 here on this thing.
Synchronized watches.
There's nothing wrong.
There we go, we got 7 o'clock now.
Yes.
This meeting will self-destruct.
3 seconds.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We're gonna call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock on September 28th, 2022. And this is which I just lost now.
Workshop.
A workshop. Thank you, Joe. So, good evening, everybody. Roll call. First thing, Joe Armand,
I am here.
David Budris,
Present.
Stephen Hardy,
Here.
Peter Davenport is going to try and make it, and Levi Shank will be here late. He's got a function at a school, so he said he would be listening online. I turned my phone off. I don't know if he's called anybody.
No.
Got mine on buzz.
Okay. So, would like to recognize any of the visitors are here who would like to be on the agenda.
Chris Moritz. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Chris Moritz.
Chris Moritz,
Stan Roth.
Stan Roth,
Troy Crawford.
Troy Crawford. I thought you said Charles for a minute. I thought Charles Crawford.
Charles Marsh.
Who is that guy? Good evening, everybody. So, first thing on our list tonight, after recognize the visitors, is the lease of our building on Highway 28.
I do have one addition to the agenda.
Okay, the additions are clean at the end, but I'll let you put that in there right now.
Sorry.
Okay?
Now I'll shut up. Go for it.
We don't really have any new information, and I just want to keep pounding on that we need to keep moving forward on our lease agreement with our piece of property, because time is ticking away.
Stephen and I have talked briefly about it, and with all of the ongoing things building up to Fall Festival last week, we agreed that we will probably kind of formulate some ideas and meet next week. In addition, we would encourage any of the other council people who have any points that they would like to bring into this discussion on the front side. It would be really nice if we could get their points of view, the point that they want to make or bring into it. It'd be nice to just have a working document that we just have to do minor tweaks to before it's done.
Sounds reasonable. I saw Jerry today send out I don't know where it came from. I'm going to call it a boilerplate
A sample.
sample for so you two have that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they'd like to say about that? No? Okay. The next thing I'd like to bring up is I got emails today, or the other day, from a lady at the Lincoln County Assessor's Office, and we have levy information coming up and property tax, and this has all got to be prepared and documented and filled out by the end of November. I'm going to need help with this. So I'm raising the flag right now that help will be needed getting the levy information in and done by the end of November.
What does that consist of?
The person I talked to on the phone was must have been new at her job, because she couldn't give me information to speak of, and I told her I was new at my job too, and I'm gonna need a lot of information, so I told her you're gonna be hearing from me again.
So this is a document that we almost missed getting filed last year. I was not on the board, or the council at that time, it was something where it had been brought up, but no final determination was made, and the council had to have a special session to kind of put that to bed.
That doesn't surprise me.
And my understanding of it at that time, and I've not really had a chance to look at this document, but it sounded like it was a pretty boilerplate thing. It was just a matter of filling in the boxes with the right information, and it, boom, done. So, but I really want to dig into it a little deeper.
From what I've read on it, we can increase the tax by 1% if our expenses are gonna be such that that's what we have to do.
And my understanding is that has been traditionally what has been done.
Always, not let it slide, because if you let it slide, then there's a problem.
Yeah,
You can't get it back.
Yeah.
yeah. It's not like you can make up 2% next year.
So we have 2 months right now to get this done.
What I would suggest is first maybe give a talk to see if Nathan or Justin, just because they're people who have already done the paperwork. If they can give you all the help you need, that'd be great. Otherwise, if you need to dive into that for its own sake, let me know and I'll help you with that. But from what I had heard with Nathan, I never remember him saying that the paperwork was the problem for us. It was more about the vote. So I think that should go pretty quick, but I didn't do it, so.
Okay. That was on my list to call Nathan, and maybe Mike too.
Yeah.
See what I can find out from him. I don't know that our new treasurer has any info.
Levi, I've got you on speaker in the
Okay.
council. Okay.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right.
Okay, we can put that one to bed. Next item on the list is the budget review for 2022. That's coming up too, or for 2023. Has anybody had any time or interest in looked at any of the paperwork here?
Briefly.
Briefly.
That match the bunch of PDFs that Jerry sent out.
Yes. So that's another one coming up before the end of the year, which is going to be a Herculean project for more than one person. Your current mayor is putting in about 3 times the number of hours that the position calls for. So there's not a lot more time that he can put in.
Traditionally, what is the role of the council on the budget? Isn't it our job to present? or-
Actually, it's reversed. The mayor and the.
Does the budget present
They
it
do
to
it,
us?
and then, yeah.
There is the budget committee, which
Yep.
I believe is now officially Peter and myself.
Yes, it is.
So that has been there to assist the mayor with things.
Okay.
Contextually, though, I mean, we can put in hours, but just to set expectations. Last year was my first year on it with Justin. And then Peter has not been on budget committee before, to my knowledge. So the goal of the budget committee to add kind of wisdom and advice on things is a little bit thin in that capacity, but that would be one area where maybe I will speak with Justin to see if he would be willing to at least give us some pointers. Maybe at least come to one meeting and sit down with us as a citizen to help us have some orientation there.
Well, if you want, I'll offer my service and time with you, Stephen, if you want to sit down together and do it with the mayor.
If you want to
Thank
do
you.
that, you can swap with Peter because there can't be 3 of us because of quorum. So I'd be happy with that. I think just check it with Peter. I don't think he'll arm wrestle you for it.
Right.
I remember that last year being gone over several times in a couple special meetings to get it done.
Which is pretty common. I mean, it's really hard to settle budgets at the end of the year is something I've heard for time going back and back and back.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you gentlemen on that. Next topic. Cemetery. The cemetery has more problems than we can shake a stick at. It needs a new sprinkler system. It has trees that needs to come down. Since the retirement of a person who was here for 40 plus years, the knowledge of who's buried where, who's not buried where, has little by little by little trickled down to where now we're at the point where we can't find who's in a grave. And all of the documentation has gotten to the point that it's becoming untenable. So it's something we're going to have to think about addressing here. This information has been lost from some of the people who have handled it for years, and it needs to be updated. Jerry's looked at a couple programs to enter this stuff in. Stan has looked at one that is apparently possibly unsupported in the future. But there's different people who have looked into these possible programs. And of course it will require money. But the cemetery has always been run through the city hall, and it's become a situation now where the knowledge has gone away, and I'm not quite sure what we're going to do. Sorry for all this wonderful news at tonight, but these are facts. We don't have to do anything about
Hello,
that
Mr.
tonight, but I
Davenport.
want you guys to think about it.
So one thing I would say is that regarding the solution that Stan had, even though I did express some warnings of where support may go in the future, there is a path out of that. I'm not concerned that the data would ever be lost. There's no question there's a path out if it ever does become unsupported. I guess if Stan wants to put in hours, in my book, as long as we don't have any specific concerns, he gets to determine where he puts his hours in. Otherwise, if we buy Plotbox for Jerry needs to put the hours in, or Stan needs to be willing to work with Plotbox. So it's kind of like the person willing to donate the time kind of rules the day to a certain extent in my book. But I don't know what Stan's intentions towards that is.
Yeah, I'm not, although I perused Plotbox, I'm not sure how much support you get from the company with the initial setup. We were supposed to have a telecon with one of those gentlemen, and that didn't happen. So,
Because of them. It didn't happen because of them.
Well, I talked to them. They had called, but that happened to be a morning when everybody walked in the office at the same time.
Okay.
So we didn't get the concentrated effort that we wanted.
Wasn't there some prior, the geo or something mapping,
yep,
some kind of gives, or somebody come through?
GIS mapping, correct.
And did we ever figure out how far they did get? I know they didn't complete it
Not very-
because they couldn't read the names on the old the old records. Is that all that's holding us up, is legible names, or what actually is holding us up on that?
Our documentation is,
Well, I think you had two things. You had legibility and time.
Yeah.
Right? Because even if you could read it, well, I mean, I guess maybe the geo survey people would have entered it if they could have read it. I don't know, but
And once that company would have put that in, say they went finished their job, I don't recall what that was really gonna get us. It was just gonna be on a map, a website, and this is where everybody's at. I mean, Are we looking actual names of people, or is there actually remains in a certain spot? I mean, or probably all the above, right?
Correct. If we can entertain one of our guests here, who actually spent quite a bit of time researching GIS with, I can't think of their name right now.
Flow analytics.
Flow Analytics, that's the people.
Flow?
Flow Analytics,
analytics.
yes.
Do you want an opinion on that?
Sure.
I spent probably altogether under 10 hours looking into it. It's not that much of an improvement over what we've got leaning up against the wall over there. It's expensive, and for what they have produced for us, I'm not convinced that it has any more accuracy than what we would have on a set of paperwork that's in the shop or someplace here in the city's custody. They have not done anything with the cemetery yet that we can tell. There's nothing visible on their website to indicate they've applied any of the information that Jess sent them in photographs. I think they asked for additional photographs at one point, isn't that correct?
Well, that's when I went and photographed that board into about 8
Okay.
different specific photographs with the iPad.
After looking at it, I guess where I came down was if you feel like what they've given us for the city utilities is an improvement over what we have had, then maybe that much of it would be worth using. I'm not sure that the cemetery portion of it, given the condition of the data we have to feed into it, is going to be much help. Because whether we use their software, or whether we build some of our own, or whether we basically recreate the wheel of those boards that has the information on it for who's buried where, there's got to be updates done, and there's got to be verification done on site, and they haven't been here to do any of that, and that's going to be really time consuming, and it isn't going to matter much which route we take to store the data. We're going to have to go out there and verify it.
Yep. Yeah, whether,
And so I guess in my mind, it comes down to, do you want to have your information stored out in the cloud someplace where other people, where Flow Analytics is controlling access as to who can get to it and who can make updates and who can do the things that are necessary to get it correct and maintain it, or whether you want the data to be stored here where it's controlled locally and stored locally, and we're not dependent on them to do it. And I have to confess that I'm prejudiced because I wrote software for 32 years for mainframe computers, and I have had experience dealing with commercial software that was supposed to do certain things, and I was generally disappointed with the amount of effort it took to get it to work and to get it to be maintainable in the environment we were trying to put it into. I would love to see that data stored here and be able to maintain it here without going through the internet to get to it. I would propose that we would store it on our flash drive, something that's removable, that's not on a hard disk, that can be put in a drawer someplace, and it's not hackable or viewable by anybody until you plug it into the PC. I do that with all of my own sensitive data, and it's not subject to
accessed by anybody until that flash drive gets plugged in. So I'm kind of bigoted towards owning my own data and being not as dependent on commercial organizations to keep the software working and accessible.
And a big fee goes along with that too, doesn't
A
it?
substantial fee,
Yeah.
yes, and we've already paid them quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
But there, almost anything you look at, and I have looked at Flatbox in the last 2 weeks, and there is an annual fee on that. And the question is, what do you get for your annual fee besides maybe an update to the software every so often? Because we're still gonna have the job of keeping the information current that's stored there.
It's a monthly fee.
So what do you, Stan, what would you recommend, since you have wrote software programs, to keep it in-house like this? How would we go about that? Our own Nest, our own Cocoon with, it just replaces that board, and we do all the plugging in the numbers and all that.
Well, I think that the board is a good approach for having it viewable by people that walk in the door and want to know where somebody is. I was told by Jim Ells that Odessa had a really good system. And a couple of weeks ago, I went down there and I looked at theirs. And I talked to a couple of people who were involved in creating theirs and getting it up to the level it's at. They use the same kind of a reference map that we do,
Yes?
except that theirs lays on the top of the counter in their city clerk's office with a piece of clear plastic over the top of it. It's facing the clerk, but when you go in there to ask, she's got the whole thing right there. It's under the plastic. She can point you to the locations, and the map that gives you reference as to what to look for when you go out to the cemetery. Their system is not all that much better than what we've got, except that theirs is current, and everything on it is really readable. And ours is not that good, that readable. It's really hard. Those boards are, the writing is light, it's really small. With any kind of a data storage system here, we would be able to print sticky labels that we could make our own map fairly easily once we know where, once we've verified the data and know where everybody is.
How do you pose to verify?
We're gonna have to go up there and walk those rows and check off
What I mean,
up at the cemetery.
what I mean, how can you verify that that's old Ralph in that one, and that's Betty over here? You can't, you're not talking going that far, are you? Like,
Yeah.
digging them up?
No, not digging,
I mean,
not digging them up.
I mean, how do we actually verify? That's what I'm saying. How far do you want to go for verification here?
There are some graves up there that are not marked with a stone.
Yes.
Right.
If they're marked with a stone, that's pretty easy. You can walk up and down the rows. Jerry, didn't you say that we have a file someplace of cards that was made up for grave locations when people purchased lots or were buried?
It's not real accurate,
Well, it's probably as good as the boards.
yeah.
It might be better than the boards. In Odessa, I was told that they have they have file cards in boxes that are locked in a safe someplace all the time. And if they need to verify something that's on their map, then they go to those file cards. And if we want to recreate the data storage that's going to have that information in it, we're going to need to take the original file cards and go through and do our data entry off of those, not the map, because I think the map's hardest to read of anything we got, to tell you the truth.
And how did Odessa's, to me, something like a cemetery would have to be A section, B section, or designated somehow
Yes.
like that. And in A, there's 1 through 100.
And that's the other area where they're ahead of us, because we haven't maintained our markers very well. There were markers at one time up there identifying sections and lot numbers and, you know, the things that put you in the right square of ground. the
Right, yeah.
Rectangle.
Quadrant there, yeah.
What they had was some retired guy that lived down there that took it on himself to create weatherproof stick-on labels and put posts in at the corners of each of their sections of lots. And with the number, a number letter identifier of what lot that was. I don't think they used names, I think they used number letter codes. Some cemeteries use names, some of the ones in Spokane. They figure that's more artistic and flowery and whatever. But their sections are marked in Odessa, and and their map corresponds to those markings. So they're ahead of us on that. We need to just update the markings that were up there at one time and make them more visible. But we also need to create a map that we trust that corresponds to the markings that are up there on the ground.
Okay.
They have a pretty good system, but I thought I was gonna be able to go out to their cemetery and walk up to something and have something to look at. And I discovered that there was a building there sitting next to the tank that is locked all the time except Memorial Day weekend, and nobody can get in it. And there is information in there, but it's not doing anybody any good. So people that want to find somebody other than Memorial Day weekend down there, go to the city clerk's office just like they do here. So they're not that far ahead of us in that respect.
Well, when I look at what has changed over the last 50 years, is it, we're complaining, you know, just to reiterate here, is it sloppy record keeping or in the past, or is it, where have we skewed and gone wrong? Any ideas? Because
Graphite.
it's all been probably pencil, right?
It's the boards, the marks, the little squares on the boards that we have are all in pencil.
And the board's probably as big as this tablet here.
No, they fill this whole table.
But I mean,
They're the 3 tablets.
yeah, I know. I was just saying that.
It's not a bad map,
These are the
but
board- this is
it
the
just
board.
needs to be
This
upgraded a
thing that's
little
been kicking
bit.
around, this is it, and is,
Been out in the sun, looks like it's had a lot of sunlight or light
but it's just,
exposure.
it's subject to fingerprints and oils and,
It's
And the-
just faded from age.
The person who wrote there was an expert at writing in microscopic print.
Yeah,
And it's beautiful handwriting, it's just microscopic.
and I know
The
that
board's too small.
I've
then.
been in here
Yeah.
multiple times when Bunny was still the city clerk,
Sure.
Bunny Haugen, checking on and making arrangements for our family members. And she would pull out those boards and consult with them, and we'd determine what lot actually belonged to the family. And she would give those directions to the people that were putting up stump markers and the folks that were digging the holes, the city folks. But in the years since she has been retired, I think we've lost some continuity there.
Absolutely true. And Scotty.
So we need
Yeah.
to basically almost resurvey the plots, the whole cemetery, and get it lined up. So you can start from scratch again and
well, Stan,
Put
correct,
your-
we kinda need to
your
take the data that we
records.
have and plug it in
Yeah.
into some system,
Yes,
then verify it
we need to
best we
enter
can.
the data into a system that will let us produce lists of what's up there, and will let us produce labels that we can actually make a fresh map using computer printed labels that are readable.
And more permanent.
well, to me, that goes back to old school. You have to physically walk that and measure it
And-
out.
Yeah, and I think then we walk it,
But, yeah, once we've entered all the data and we have the lists to work with, then we take our lists and our fresh map and we go up there and verify. And I don't know how when data has gotten out of sync with reality, and you find one you can't trust, then the question is, how many more can you not trust? And it winds up being a really big job to do all that verification. It's going to take a lot of hours to do that.
What's the biggest, this is to the clerk and anybody else, concern, question from public? Is it people looking for somebody? Is it people wanting to buy a plot that we don't have we don't know if there's a open space? Or just what are the most frequent questions that perplex or
Finding a family member. And that actually is where Plotbox excels over anything, is because you can look up your family member sitting on your couch in Iowa, and you can see the headstone. There's a GPS attached to it. And if you wanted to visit it, you could just go from your house to that gravesite and never have to go through City Hall to find your family member. It's all right there in your hand on your phone. And that to me that's another employee. By having that monthly subscription to keep that maintained, that's another employee that we're hiring, that we don't have to pay benefits to. And
Well, I agree in that, I mean, heck, I've been a advocate of what YouTube does in making data accessible. So I'm a proponent of making sure that all the data that is not sensitive, that the city owns, should be directly accessible so that you're not in the business of handing people data all day long. So I agree with that. Problem is, the average age of the person who's coming in here looking for a relative, do you think they would reach for Plotbox in order to answer their questions? Or
No.
they would accept a direct from you to go use Plotbox?
well, I assume, I haven't asked them, but they're dealing with cemeteries all over the world. And that handheld is a separate portion of Plotbox that's more user-friendly. You type in a name and a cemetery, and it brings up the information. And I assume it's just very user-friendly. I would like to see it worked, but so long as the data is put in there every time we have a funeral, that information is always available.
So right now, the people who run this city and the people who work for this city, this gentleman right here, this man gets a call from somebody and says, we're coming tomorrow to put a headstone. He puts a note in that file right there. This guy says, what's the name? I don't know. What's the cemetery plot? I don't know. Therein lies the problem. We can't even begin to function here when we don't have any information as to.
Plotbox is going to do a really good job of giving out information once we've loaded all of the
If
information
you put it in
into
good,
it.
that's right.
And once the person knows how to consume it.
And
Yes.
once we've
Yeah.
gotten into the routine of regular updates and without delay. And the entry of the information into the system is a big job, and I don't care which system you pick to do that. It's going to be a big job.
I agree.
it's amazing how we got by for the last 50 years.
Those, you had people.
Yeah, people.
This happens
I
to
mean,
everybody. This happens to everybody when
Well,
one person controls that much information.
Yeah.
we get another employee in City Hall that works 20 hours a week. They can start on that project.
Does Tresco come in here and ask, or I mean the monument people, they come in here and ask that info? Or did,
They call, they give me a name, and they say, we're putting a headstone. So I have to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes trying to figure out where that person belongs between the map and the cards. And I just had one last week. They wanted to place the headstone. I couldn't find that person anywhere. So I called them back and said, that person's not here. And they said, well, they just want the headstone above the son and daughter. I said,
Oh.
but that person doesn't have a grave here,
yeah,
you know?
well,
They're buried in Arizona.
yeah, yeah, maybe.
And the next thing we have to do is verify when these people call, do they actually own a site in our cemetery? So there's gotta be proof of that. If we go through our documentation, they just can't say, oh yeah, that's my mom's site. Says who?
Well, generally speaking, I know a grave that's fairly fresh, and I'll say fresh, within a year or two, they usually are pretty good about putting up temporary marker.
Yeah.
You'll know who they are.
Yep.
But are these calls we're getting, is somebody that they're trying to put up a stone for somebody that died 50 years ago, 40 years ago, or something like that? Because I can see that being more of a challenge.
2 or 3 years ago,
Yeah.
somebody that died last year on the coast, they buried him on the coast, and then they decide, oh, we need him in the family cemetery. So they want him exhumed, brought over here, and put in our cemetery. So,
Or the ashes put in a grave.
yeah,
There's a lot of that.
yeah, we can have
Yeah.
ashes and a body in a grave, and there may only be one headstone.
So I think that you got a couple different problems here. You have the administrative side of it, of what does it do for Jerry? And you have the consumer side of it in terms of what does the system do for the average person looking to answer the questions. To me, I think there's a better alternative than Plotbox as far as the people, because I think my estimate is the average 70-year-old coming into town is not going to know Plotbox and have already checked it. So they're going to come here and they're going to ask you, and you're going to say, go use Plotbox, and they're going to be like, Plotbox what? And then you're going to have, and so I get where you're going. So think about this for a sec. So if whatever system, Plotbox or Access, for what Stan was saying there, if we can generate a PDF file that is the map that has legible names. And if we had, because in the very back by the building, there is that stand that's supposed to be the directory. But of course, a physical directory is not going to work because you're going to have to go back up and update it. And the sun beats down on it and fades everything out, and it's problematic.
It's been there
If
43
we had a
years.
structure to shield something away from the elements a little bit, and then you had one of the weatherproof TVs, it wouldn't be on all the time. I could make a connection of something that would simply just, when you push a button, it would turn on the TV and it would display for, say, 5 minutes this PDF. The PDF would be live. It would come from Access or Plotbox, whatever. And that way, Jerry can say, go up to the cemetery. In the back, you'll see a little kiosk thing. Press the button and it will light up. And you can see on a big 55, 60-inch screen, and it'll be on for 5 minutes, it'll shut off, because there's no reason to have in the middle of winter a TV on all the time, because it's just going to be burning electricity and burning out the TV. And so that way they can see what they need. Anyone can do that. They don't need a phone, they don't need an app, they don't need to go to the website, they don't need to figure out how to search or be able to see the thing. They can self-serve, and then Jerry can say, go up there, go do that. Then it just leaves you the question of, on the administrative side, when Jerry gets a call to say a headstone's coming, then you can separate to say which system serves you best as the administrator of the cemetery to get the information that you need. Because I wouldn't probably look to consider consumer average person question and Jerry administer, sell, find things as the same bucket necessarily. My 2 cents.
I'm advocating for a computerized system of some sort,
Mhm.
so that if somebody calls me on the phone, I can type the name in and I know the exact plot.
And I think that's true of what
Yeah, wherever that
solutions.
solutions, because that would make it so much easier.
I think we're all really after the same end result here.
Yeah, access.
And that is something that's easy to use, and the question is, what's the best path to take to get there? And there are a lot of options. With Plotbox, with their handheld device, would that be something they could come and borrow from you here in the office? Or would that be something that they would need to be carrying with them, like a smartphone?
It'd be on your smartphone, wouldn't it?
It'd be, yeah, you log in on the smartphone
They'd have to
or on
download
the
an app.
tablet.
Or
And it'll-
download an app or something.
You type in the name and it shows you where it is in the cemetery
Okay,
and what it looks like.
yeah.
So you have 2 visuals to go by when you,
And we will get to a point eventually where everybody carries those with them, but we're not there yet.
No.
but if we
Yeah.
had the TV up there with something like that where
That
it
would,
brought
would
up the
take-
name and showed the map.
right, that would take the place of a handheld device.
Mhm.
And you'd spend money to build that, because weatherproof TVs and stuff aren't cheap, and then you have to build a structure, but you weigh that against the hours that he'd have here. Because I take your point well about an employee you don't have to pay benefits for. Somewhere, whether you're putting a display thing up there, or you're paying for Plotbox or something, either you're gonna pay Jerry, or you're gonna pay some kind of a service or structure to do Jerry's job in that respect. So pick your poison.
Well, there was in the budget at one time to redo the shed up there and put a new one.
Well, yeah.
So we could section off a shed, a section of that.
Could the
It's
TV even be in
weatherproof.
City Hall?
It's-
What about
It'd
after
be
hours, weekends, Memorial
Could that
Day?
be?
You could. I guess the question is, are people gonna figure out where they need to be and remember between here and there?
Yeah.
The nice thing
That's
about
true.
having it up there is that they can see and go, oh, okay, there's that landmark. Okay, so it's over there then. Yeah, you're right. If they get it in their head well and hold it in their head until they get up there, yeah, it can be here. But
I still think you're gonna get a lot of, a couple of Memorial Days, I don't know, 2, 3 years ago, at a Spokane cemetery, and seeing them, you're still gonna need assistance somehow. I just believe it's the type of person, people, Aunt Mabel is 93, and so, they're gonna be, you're still gonna have to lead them around through this, so you're still gonna have to put in some time.
So a couple years ago, I was looking for a little brother to put below me. And I knew which cemetery he was, but I couldn't, I was too young when he passed, so I didn't know where to find him. So they didn't tell me exactly where he was, but they did give me a section that was probably 30 yards by 30 yards. And, said, hey, he's in here. And so that allowed me to go, and I found his grave.
Yeah, that's what basically they
You
do.
just basically had to start walking around,
Yeah.
but it narrowed down the field.
well,
And that was completely fine with me. I
In
mean, they
terms
didn't
of-
have to give me the exact location, because the exact location, no offense, but if I have a GPS coordinate, and unless I'm not gonna download an app for a one-time use. But give me a section,
But
I'm
you
there.
don't have to download the app.
Okay, well,
It's all
browser-based.
cloud-based.
okay.
But how many of these do we get a month, or in a year?
Depends. I never know.
You mean how many people
Well,
on
what's-
an average?
On average.
There's been a couple a month or more this year. This has been a busy year at the cemetery.
But I think once we make our best effort at giving people the information, we're gonna have to draw a line of what level of support we're gonna give. Because right now, if someone comes in here and says to Jerry, I can't find the grave, I want you to drive up there with me and help me find it. Is he expected to do that? If everyone
No.
says no, then somewhere there's a line where we don't give every support that a person asks. So if there is a line in there somewhere that's not currently defined, then the question is, how do we define that line? Do we say there's a map up there, you're gonna have to figure out how to use it? Or do we say there's a map up there and I'll drive up there and I'll explain to you how to use it? So that just because people want support doesn't necessarily mean that we will go to every extent to give it.
I like the idea of an updated map. What they have up there, like I said, it's at least 43 years old or better. Update the darn thing, and I think that would facilitate. You have a copy here and up there, a master here and there. People that come to most of them wouldn't stop out here because on a Sunday, the city hall's not open and they take a Sunday drive. They're up there looking for a relative. So they go, over here, information, and they go hunt it down.
So basically, you're saying we need to do what Stan said, that we need to go through all of our info and bring it up to date.
Right.
No matter which system we use, we need to start there.
That would be the first step
Yeah.
in my mind, is to get the data accurate and stored where it's easier to maintain and that it would easier to keep current.
If we can't.
And right
Go
now,
ahead.
we don't have that.
Because if we can't read those, no dang program in the world's gonna benefit us, because if we don't know who's there,
That's
it
right.
don't matter.
Well, and I'm gonna offer that this kind of segues into something that we have to do anyway as a city, is we have to get our own website.
You're gonna have to.
As we do that, we could incorporate a mapping system, or at least those PDF files
Yeah.
could be in there. We could make them searchable,
Yeah.
and so people could search in that section of our city website for the database, and it would pull up a map and give them a section.
how much trouble is it to do that website?
Well,
I'm surprised we haven't had one
Just,
already.
so we own a
Yeah,
domain. If you go to harrington.city, there is a website there. It's just a basic WordPress. There's nothing on it. It was just something I set up. It kind of was necessary as a part of getting the email addresses. It's the main reason why we own harrington.city. So we have a website. It's not functional in any way that's meaningful to us. So the question is really about how do we take that web property that we own and do something that we want to do with it. And you know, I contracted to Microsoft for 10 years, and so I agree with Stan that I building data management applications, it's true that a lot of them are selling you a load of BS and they don't work as well as they say they are going to, and there is a security in having access to your own data, and I support all of that wholeheartedly. What I have found, though, is a lot of the times the contracts that I was a part of started when certain people on the previous company left and no one knew how to work with it. And so that's the downside of when you own your own data, you're responsible for your own data. And that's great as long as Stan's here, and if Stan was to go, then maybe I could probably figure it out. I haven't specifically worked with Access, but I'm the next most technological person probably. If anyone has a claim to that, you're welcome to it. But then what happens if I'm gone, right? And so that is one thing that theoretically Plotbox should support, that kind of a continuity for us. Will they actually do that? Probably not, because a lot of them don't actually give you the level of service that you think you're paying for. But the reason why I'm going back to that is it's the same thing with the website. I could have already built a website for us, but the question is, who's going to maintain that website? Am I always going to maintain that website? If I stop maintaining it, does it become Jess's responsibility or Jerry's responsibility or someone else on the council going to do it? So until I had a path between here and sustainability, I haven't done anything with it because I don't think it really benefits the city. In my personal opinion, what I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years is that when someone comes in with a good heart and says, I want to do this for the city, I want to give the city a physical thing with the park or the town square stuff or this, that, the other thing, right? They give the city something, and they're really happy to see that the city now has it. Now the city is responsible for maintaining it. Some of those gifts we can't maintain. We don't do well at maintaining. We don't have budget for maintaining. We don't have the manpower for maintaining. And so that's part of why I said, you know, if Stan wants to do this work, I don't care what system he uses, because I've already seen that he's a diligent enough person that I could convert it, if need be, from wherever he has to whatever it needs to go. So I don't care what he uses right now. But, you know, if he's the one willing to put in the work with it, I think we give him the respect of saying whatever you want to do is what you want to do. And if we don't want to do that, then we can pay the hours to have someone else do it. But my point before I shut up is just to say that whether it's with a website or whether it's with this data, nothing's for free, because the city doesn't have a tech person. The website, the email, the stuff I'm going to talk about in my tech update today, all happens because of time that I donate to the city. And so if we're going to think about a city that exists in 10 and 20 years and 30 and 40, we need to make sure that everything we commit to, property-wise, whether that's physical property or digital property, has a maintenance plan. That way we can continue to use this over the long run. So yes, we can get a website, but we're going to need to talk about who pays for that website. And I'm not talking about the hosting fee, because that's already included in our emails. There are no new hosting fees involved to set up a website. It's who's going to design it, who's going to maintain it, how frequently does the data there change, all those kind of stuff.
When you back up a second, Steve, enlighten us. When you say you're talking maintain, what exactly does that entail, briefly?
The more you put on it, and the more things that you put on it that pertain to a specific time and date, the more it needs to be updated.
Okay.
So if you take a specific page and say, this is the city of Harrington, we have a mayor and 5 councilmen, blah, 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 that probably will never need to be updated because it is not time specific. But as soon as you say our current mayor is Jess Silhan, then someone's going to have to update that if and when Jess is no longer the mayor. And these
Gotcha.
are current. And see, this is the fight that happens, because the more general you make it, the more the public says, well, this website's not really useful to us because it doesn't have anything specific. So why does it even exist? So you put more data in to make it specific, and then you don't have a maintenance plan, and it falls out of date, and then people say, well, why would I use the website? Because it still lists Mike Cronrath as a councilman. This website's not helpful.
Okay.
Right? And so that's the thing, is that you got to strike that balance of only put on the website what you're willing to pay to keep up to date. The things that don't change are the freebies. But in Fall Fest dates and councilmen and all those kind of things,
Date
someone needs
specific,
to update
yeah.
it.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought it was. Thanks,
Yeah.
Stephen.
Yep.
I can tell that Stephen and I have grown up in the same kind of philosophy regarding data management.
Yep.
My disclaimer is that my computer skills are about 25 years obsolete at this point.
It's not a
And
problem.
I'm just offering to help by creating something that I understand and can create without a huge amount of gyrations.
Yep.
And that's not to say that that's going to be the right place to have it stored for a while. But it would be a place that we could put the data to make it easily accessible while we're doing the transition.
And that's-
Because I see this thing being broken up into a series of steps,
Yeah.
not one big clump that we'd swallow all at once.
The hardest step is between where we are now and whatever is next. All the steps after that are much smaller, because to get from here to that next step, we need to get something into a digital form and verify that it is correct. What that form is almost completely irrelevant, because converting between Form A and Form B will be a minuscule amount of time compared to what it's going to take to turn this physical board into some form of data. So that's why my opinion and recommendation to the council is, if he's willing to give time, let him rule the day and say, thank you very much. You are a wonderful human being, and let him run with it. And if we need to go to Plotbox after that, I am sure it will be a much more easy process than to try and go from this to Plotbox than to go from that to Plotbox. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Stan, so far, for all the work
Yes.
you've done and information that you've brought to us.
Well, like I say, my skills are kind of obsolete,
Well,
but the concepts still make sense to me.
so are mine. So when you have a 69 vehicle and it doesn't run, I can probably help you. So there's still a lot of us driving old stuff.
A good example of this whole thing is that quite a lot of years ago, my grandfather bought 5 lots up there on the hill. He and my grandmother are in 2 of them. My mom and dad are in 2. And there's an extra one on the end of that row that still is assigned to our family. And between my cousin Janice and myself, we're trying to figure out what we ought to do with that.
Flip a
And-
coin.
And we're thinking that we'll probably hang on to it because someone in her family might want that. In fact, we think maybe there's somebody that will.
Land prices keep going up.
Yeah. So, but that's the kind of questions people are gonna come in with. And in the past, when I've had to come here and ask those questions, Bunny would pull out the boards and she'd give me an answer. The answer didn't always work because when we put in the stone for that was when my dad passed away first. And when we requested the stone to be put in for my mom and dad, which would be 2 lots, it was installed, and we came and looked at it, and it had to be moved. We asked Bunny to have them come and move the stone. She did that, we came back and looked, it had to be moved a second time to get it positioned correctly to match up with where the graves actually were. So that's the kind of thing that people go through and get frustrated by, that if we had really good, solid data, reliable data, it wouldn't be quite that frustrating.
Oh, and your own ground pitting radar. You go up there and mark it. There it
Put it in the
is.
2023 budget.
Something else we've
Even
been
then, some of
running
the
into is people bringing ashes
Yep.
and want to bury them with their mom and dad, their brother, their sister. Well, now they're in the same grave, not without a headstone. So instead of 1 or 2 people in that grave, you now have 3 or 4, and you only know who the 2 on the headstone are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for that?
Digging the hole?
No, I mean,
I dig the
usually
hole.
their headstone, they call
Oh.
up Tresco or whatever and they come down and add them. I mean, there's a little bit of responsibility on the family too.
Yeah.
Sometimes the customer, the family, doesn't think that far beyond simply getting the ashes put in a place.
So,
We're
I
not
was-
getting that info to them.
I was
No.
gonna say, when my mom passed away, she wanted half of her ashes spread with her mother's. Now, does it have to be the whole person, or can it be a
No.
half? And does it have to have a headstone, because we didn't put anything in there? Scotty opened it up, we just sprinkled it down there, and he put the sod back on, and that was it.
Well, it's helpful to have a marker. Of
Oh,
where-
I know where she is.
Scotty does too.
And I don't,
but-
yeah, and I don't, and I don't think the rest of the family's gonna, it's gonna matter. Like most people, they scatter their ashes into the wind, or they're up in the forest, or they're out in the ocean, or something like that.
Some creek
It's not
or
quite
river.
as important,
Yeah.
and if it is, then they could go ahead and get that marker, and it doesn't have to be a whole headstone.
No, it
It could be
doesn't.
one
It
of
could
those
be the
little-
concrete marker.
Yeah, just one of those little ones.
The thing that makes some of this more complicated is that there's a whole lot more options available to people and that people are making available than there used to be.
yeah.
Because the whole tradition of how you get buried is changing.
Well, that lies our rules and cemetery parameters, what's allowed and what isn't.
So thanks again, Stan, for all your help. And I hope we're not done with you yet, because I
And
think we got
Yeah,
work for
thanks
you.
your help.
And you notice that,
Yeah, hopefully you don't throw us overboard.
you notice that I haven't said anything about a fee either.
No,
And I know
Not
you
yet.
have
That's a
to.
good
Yeah.
thing, that's a good
Did
thing.
did I hear yet?
So we have other issues at the cemetery too. The sprinkler system is as old as the system we have of keeping track of the graves. It's been brought up to us, and so is all the hardware that runs it. Stan ran down some of the pipes, and he didn't find the 4x8 sheet of plywood that's laying over 3 or 4 of the other ones, which is right up there across from Connie King's place. So we have that staring us in the face too. There's gonna be
So-
some large expenditures coming.
What
to-
does old mean for that type of, I mean, the pipes are breaking or?
The whole system is deteriorated after probably 10 years. You know how sprinklers and plastic.
They've stuck, some of them are high pressure sprinklers, some of them are not.
Okay.
So what they did is, oh, I got this one, let's use it. So now you
And-
got a collage of stuff up there.
And we have headstones that set here, and here's a sprinkler. And when there's a headstone sticking up 3 feet in front of it, guess what happens to the grass on the other side of the headstone?
And guess what I get to hear?
So people will come in and say, well, just add another sprinkler. When when Troy goes up to dig a hole, here they dig a hole, and here's the sprinkler line going right straight across through the plot.
Deteriorate
Right.
the stone too.
So what we have to do
Yeah.
is cut that line out.
Right.
We don't replace it because now there's gonna be a headstone there. Cause we're gonna have to reroute the whole thing.
Right.
I want to make sure the council members are all clear on what just said. And that's that I didn't do anything about the sprinkler system or piping in the cemetery. What I took was what I got off of Flow Analytics results of the work they had done. And I went around town and spent a couple of hours finding things based on their map to see how accurate their map really was. And if I was gonna go out here with a backhoe and start digging up pipes based on their map, I would dig some dry holes for a while because the accuracy isn't what I would have hoped for.
Really?
Did they
No.
also, were they the ones that did BNSF's control lines?
They show pipes, I can show you the map, on one
Some
side of
of-
the street, and we know it's not there because we've been in there and patched
Oh,
it.
even
I'm
on
not
a-
supposed to answer that, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
that's not a very good system.
I agree with you, cause on the
It's a
computer
very
it'll tell us
cool
it's a
looking map.
6-inch line.
Yeah.
We dig it
But it's
up,
not
it's a
correct.
4-inch line.
It's for some other town.
No, it's
Oh,
not that
making sure
bad,
you
but
got the
it's not.
parts, right parts.
Not
is the
accurate.
problem.
No.
I don't know
Okay.
where they got their information.
So expensive fixes for the cemetery, we cannot use most of the cemetery money because it's locked away in investments and we can't get at it, right?
Endowment.
Correct.
So the only money that we can fund this with possibly is the, what is it, about 10 grand of maintenance money that's available?
There's 2 of them, maintenance and updates. I think there's 3 funds total.
There's,
Endowment,
yeah,
go ahead, Jerry.
endowment, cemetery, and cemetery improvement.
Improvement.
So they're under cemetery, there's maintenance,
Mhm.
and under cemetery improvement, there's maintenance and supplies. And between the 2 of them, it's about 12,000, I
Okay.
think.
I was in the range. So, if I'm understanding what I think I'm understanding about the sprinkler system, there's only one path out of it, is to do a fundraising drive to get money that's, or I guess transfer in from general funds from the city. But otherwise, you're gonna need a fundraising drive to get money into the non-endowment cemetery funds to be able to use it. Which will probably confuse some people because people like, the cemetery has tons of money, why are you doing a fundraising drive?
What's the purpose of the endowment fund if we can't use it, can't transfer it?
We can use the
It's a-
interest off of it.
It's a perpetual gift that keeps going, and it's set up to where the interest it makes
Yeah.
can be used
Which
only.
is now more
Principal
than it
can
was.
never be
but
touched.
It's like,
still not
it's
much
like the
compared
Nobel
to-
Prize money, there's a set amount in a fund, and the prize is,
Yeah.
But you're right, at some point, the city could be gone, and the cemetery would still have funds.
With nobody around hanging around.
because we went broke trying to maintain something with funds that we couldn't use.
How much, did they ever tell you how much just for the sprinkler system?
Oh, it
It
was,
was 30-something to even,
30,000 just for the sprinkler system.
just, that was
To
just to start
install it
with.
or to detect it?
To install a new one,
Yeah.
to make sure it's right and it's hitting all the directions.
Yeah, and I don't think that was the whole place. That was,
Okay. And
Correct
then,
some of the
last
problems.
week, we've been on the trees. They need to be cut down.
some do.
We pulled a 15-foot limb last week off, out of the cemetery. Someone's gonna get hit by one of those limbs, or who's gonna pay for the damaged headstones?
Well, the trees we absolutely
in the
need
right
to do,
place.
because if the trees don't get done, someone could get injured and we have a liability. The grass and sprinkler system is not quite in the same category, because no one's going to die because they came into contact with brown grass. So, and I don't think you can, well, I'm sure that's true.
So,
But we probably can't even put in a new sprinkler system until we actually have some of our map concerns fixed, because if we don't want to keep doing this thing where we put in a headstone and it's not aligned, we need to have a map that we can trace to know, okay, if you put in a line here, you're never, ever, ever supposed to have a headstone hit here ever again.
Right.
And so we might not, even if we had the money, I don't know that we could just plunk down the $30,000 right now, because we are not prepared to be able to tell the people, here, put it in here.
Right.
sprinkler lines need to be in the alleyways, as
Yes,
they're
they're
called.
putting headstones in the alleyways where we
Yes.
drive our equipment.
Not
We're-
supposed
They're
to.
overselling.
We're selling some of those now.
Well, then you create your own problem.
That's right. I couldn't agree with you more.
Problem number 4.
Okay, there's more to be done with the cemetery. It seems to be a critical point of reference for this town, and is going to be for sometime in the near future. So it's something we're going to have to really focus on and spend some time. Next thing on the list here is the water line with TD&H and Burlington Northern. And there's not a whole lot, I don't think, to bring people up to date on, other than there's been some insurance required by the railroad. Joe's been handling that, and I think that's pretty well handled at the moment for the immediate near future.
For the immediate near future, yes.
Yeah. The good thing I can say is that BNSF returned Stephen Marsh's informational calls and paperwork within a week, which is absolutely phenomenal.
Who
And
does he know?
thank you that we got that done. It's not done yet, but there was actual communication between them and us, and they've decided there's a few more things they'd like to have done. Some of the existing water pipe that we're going to abandon, they want it removed, and the rest of the pipe needs to be filled full of a concrete substance. It's like an expanding grout. So you would cover one end of the existing pipe that we're going to abandon and pump in this expanding grout, which is a real thin slurry of cement and grout, and fill the pipe full of cement, which would eventually harden so that if the pipe rusts, it can't collapse and have a void there. That's their number one goal. So things are moving along there with that, and that's been a good thing.
I will add to that to date has been the only modification to the permit request that has been asked for. From, so engineering presented it to BNSF. That's the only thing that they returned so far, is just they wanted some updates on it. They didn't want the line just to be abandoned, they wanted it to be dealt with. I'm pretty sure he already expected that to be done. So,
Excuse me, Joe.
yeah.
Done?
No, and just on the insurance thing, that I'm working on that as hard as I can. We've got an initial, basically our insurance as we have it right now, presented to BNSF. These are always complicated issues with large corporations, so I'm expecting them to return and say, no, they want to see this information and that information. So we'll hammer that out as that comes along, and if anybody wants some specifics, I'll be happy to get into it, but it's kind of techno insurance geek stuff, so like I said, if anybody wants some specifics, I'll be happy to tell them.
That's why we have you, Joe, for technical insurance,
Well,
geek
it's
stuff.
It's just,
This is insurance for what? Are we gonna file a claim?
no. We have to show, we have to show the railroad that we have insurance, so if somebody gets hurt on the job site, falls in a hole, that our insurance is gonna cover it and they're not gonna hold the railroad responsible. And we in turn are gonna make sure the contractor is gonna have the same insurance, so that if they do something that somebody gets hurt, we're not gonna be responsible,
Got it.
and the railroad's not gonna be responsible.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
So Stephen Marsh asked at our conference this morning, Joe and I and Stephen Marsh and Cynthia Wall were on. That's an every Wednesday event if anybody would like updates on that. And they are going to extend the bid time till the 19th of October. They gave them one more week because these things just came out. And he figured we might get at least a couple more people bidding if they had an adequate amount of time, because we are under a time constraint. So that's the date that we're expecting to have all quotes in, or all bids for the job. I got a bill today for $15,984 for hauling and installing all of the dirt. The line has now been covered with at least a foot of dirt or more on all sides. The culvert has been lined with freeze blankets and hay, and the other side has been covered with dirt. So that was from DW, and of course this should be turned into the Public Work Board and the state. So if it freezes before we get this done, which there's, I think, probably a good chance it will, we should be safe. So we're no longer having sleepless nights over whether it freezes before the pipe is put in.
You're talking about the permanent fix.
Yes, because the permanent fix could be 12 weeks out
Yeah.
before they get it finished. If we're waiting for another 3 weeks to get the bids in, then they start, and that could take 20-some days, according to DW, if they start immediately. So we're looking at another month and a half at least before, so it could be done. So we've covered the pipes with dirt now, and we no longer have an exposed PVC pipe.
So what you're saying is everybody starts needing to buy houses on this side of the tracks?
No?
Just let your water run.
Well, that's probably gonna be a safe suggestion for everybody anyway,
Yeah.
to a certain degree.
So things are not going as fast as I would like them, but they're moving forward, so that's a good thing. We've made it through one major hurdle, waiting for the nations to say whether we could dig under there, and they said nothing, so we're moving forward from there. Now we're waiting on the railroad to agree with all of our plans forward, and then get somebody to actually do the work. And they're talking about a 24-inch steel canister with a new 12-inch PVC water line, which the PVC will be 3/4 of an inch thick. So this is a major piece of PVC and steel fittings on each end. So it's going to be a pretty good sized project.
And that's still in addition to our theoretical ability to piggyback on Intermountain, right?
Yes,
So we'll be going from what we had before as a 6-inch line, then we'll have 12 inches of our own, and then we could theoretically have another 4 or 6 in Intermountains. We could
On-
have a tremendous amount of water flow under the track.
To a tank.
To, yeah, just the capacity.
That's good.
The,
Good.
yeah, the
So-
redundancy
Parks
is
now.
what makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
So those things are wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Additions.
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief because we know that Levi is on the other end of the line, just trying to count until the moment where he can,
He's snoring.
yeah, he can just do his thing there. I just wanted to give updates on a few things. Some of them are more new, some of them have been around for a while, but we just haven't specifically talked about them. So I just want to give a quick little overview on some things regarding email and some things at, I won't call it website because we don't have a website, we talked about that. But we have a domain name of harrington.city and there's some things we're doing off of that. So first of all, just a listing of the different email accounts we have. There's now been email accounts made for all the library board members. So there's that. Of course, there's the clerk account, all of the current council members. I made an account for the librarian. That person TBD. There is a treasurer email, and that is treasurer@harrington.city, and the librarian was librarian@harrington.city, which, just to point out, because there's been questions before, why is like the library board and the city council members by name, and the mayor and the clerk and the librarian by title? The concept being is that when a new librarian or a new clerk or a new mayor comes in, they should have back access to everything from the previous person. But if Troy gets elected city councilman, he could do a Freedom of Information Act to get my inbox that which is applicable, because by law there are things that can be discussed in an email that is not subject to Freedom of Information Act, like that which would also pertain into executive session. But by and large, he can still get that information, but it wouldn't do him a lot of good as a city councilman just because he holds the new position number that I have. It doesn't mean that it does him any good to know my previous inbox. So that's why there's continuity, is anything that a person needs to have continuity of generally elected governing position, that's an inbox that doesn't get tied to the person. Also, we don't want the community members to think, oh, I email the librarian. Who is that now? It switched. Or who is the mayor now, right? It's always mayor at Harrington, clerk at Harrington, librarian at harrington.city, and that way you will always get that no matter who is in there, and we don't have to do any changes. So those, and then also Troy has an inbox, troy.crawford at Harrington.
Is there anything on it?
I don't know.
Oh.
There probably are a few things. The forwardings. So there's, and I had actually mentioned this to whoever stayed after a couple meetings ago, but since we're on record now, I'll just say it for everyone's benefit. Budget at harrington.city goes to the mayor and the treasurer. All it does is it just forwards through to those people. Council at harrington.city, of course, has all the current councilmen on it. Government at harrington.city goes to council and office. Office goes to clerk and mayor. Public Works goes to Troy and if we set up an inbox for Public Works too. It's that way you can just send to both at the same time. And then I set one up for Library Board. Library Board at harrington.city should go to all the library board members.
So how do I log on to that Public Works?
Public Works is, these are just forwarding addresses. They don't have their own inbox. So when I send to Public Works, it clones it and it sends it to you and whoever PW2 is, which is not currently set up. So like when someone sends it to council at harrington.city, that is not its own inbox that we all access. It just takes an email that goes into council at harrington.city, splits it up into 5 different copies, and sends it to all of us.
So it's on the Apple phone?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it just goes into your Troy.com.
The one you don't want to use.
Well, I
that
don't
we
want to buy
have in
Russian
the-
brides.
It's,
I get emails for that a lot.
Okay, so that's the email stuff of what we had before. Something new that's coming on now that has a relation to the water issue that we had and hopefully the water issue that we're not going to have before the permanent fix is in. Can I have the piece of paper real quick? I created this. I suggested to Jerry that it be placed in the window because there was something that showed itself as a problem, that when we had an emergency, you can look at that if anyone wants to, when we had an emergency, we did not have a good way of contacting the town to say, please don't water, or all this kind of stuff, right? We tried to do our best, that we contacted through the school, and we got updates to Karen Robertson, and Joe was posting from his official Joe Ormond City Councilman Facebook page. So we've been trying to work on ways to address that. Joe made an official Facebook page for the city, which is great. The only problem with that is that not everyone is on Facebook, especially in the town of this demographic. Not everyone checks their Facebook regularly, right? Is that you might be on Facebook, but maybe you only check it once every month and a half. If that's the case, it still doesn't do us much good in this situation. So what is probably the most accessible thing we can do is email. Across all the age groups, people have email. Whether they can find it in their inbox if they're getting a bunch of Russian bride spam or not is another matter, but we can't be responsible for that. So, set up 2 email distribution lists. One is info, and all that does, that's the higher volume, lower criticality email list. So for example, what might go to a person who is subscribed to info? Currently, when Jerry puts out the packet of information for the city council, he sends it to council@harrington.city, and it goes to all of us council members. But there are people who sit out there as citizens who would also like to have the packet, and sometimes Jerry's running around trying to print things off to get everyone a copy of it. In the future, because council will be subscribed to info, Jerry can just send something to info, and it will go to any interested citizen in the whole town, and it will go to the council as well. Now, a lot of people who don't attend the meetings might not want that level of information hitting their inbox regularly, so that's why I made alerts. And that's, I was going to use the word emergencies, but that was almost a bit too strong. It could be for something a little bit less than an emergency, but alerts is basically like, just tell me only the critical things I need to know to live in this town and shut up about everything else. So that's why there's 2 of these, because the thing is, if people don't subscribe to it, if they don't read it, there's no point in having it. So we need to maintain a person's trust that they're going to get the level and frequency of information that they expect to get. Or they'll just unsubscribe, or they'll mark it as spam, and it won't do us any good. So that's why there's 2 levels to
This
it.
is what you see when you go there?
Yeah. Can I show?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, this gives our citizens the ability to basically sign up for an email distribution,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
So we need to sign up for this stuff.
Yep, and this is one thing that, so for a few other organizations in town, I had made mail distribution lists before. The problem is, and why I hadn't done this sooner, is because I was looking for a solution where the consumer could manage their interaction on their own terms. Because I wasn't going to put myself in the position of having people come in and here say, can Stephen please add me to the distribution list? Yeah. I'm not going to do that. And so it took a while to find a solution where you can add yourself, you can remove yourself. You can say, do I want every email or do I want a summary email at the end of each day? You can control your level of interaction with it. And so that's what took, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about sustainability, right? I could have done a solution earlier, but I would have been in the middle of it, not as good as if people can just go here themselves. So if you go to info.harrington.city, you'll be taken to a page where you can put your email address in and subscribe. Again, at the bottom of every single email is an unsubscribe link. So no one's forced into taking this. You can get out at any time. And then there's also alerts.harrington.city, and you can subscribe to that one. There isn't a reason to be involved with both, because if you are in info, you will receive all alerts. Info is a superset of alerts. So anytime an alert goes out, alerts gets it, info gets it, everyone gets it, right? So you pick one which is the level that is appropriate for you. And then from our end, it'll be easy enough that people who are designated senders will be able to just send an email to those two addresses, info@harrington.city or alerts@harrington.city, and it'll just go out. Currently, the senders are myself and Joe and Jess and Jerry, and I'm not trying to exclude the rest of the council. I can add you if you wish. Actually, David has probably the next best claim as Mayor Pro Tem. I am only not having you guys on there yet because I wouldn't want you to accidentally send an email out to everyone in the city when you don't mean to. So it's for your protection, but if you would like the ability to, I'm certainly not trying to exclude anyone. The last thing that I have to say about those, and I'll take questions with it, is this is a free service. They do have a paid option. One of the problems with the free service is that you do not get to customize the welcome message. When you get the welcome message, it'll say that you can send to this list. That is incorrect. The average person cannot send to this list. Only designated senders that I just listed can send to this list. But I can't change that welcome email unless we pay a certain amount a month for the privilege of doing so. Other than that, once you get a welcome message that isn't quite accurate, it just has a little advertisement at the bottom that says that it's powered by this company, which is, I think, a small price to pay for what we need to get the information across. So
what you're saying is that if I was in my personal email address and I tried to send to that email
Yep,
address,
you'll get a
it's
rejection,
gonna
and I've
get
tested that.
rejected.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
you'll say, sorry, you do not have permissions to send to this list, and then it'll give you a link to say, if you want to contact the administrators could maybe make you a sender. But
Is this or a facsimile of it able to go out with our newsletter or with our invoices?
yeah,
For
sure.
the month?
And you
Can we put
make-
those on the city bulletin boards?
I don't know why we couldn't do that either, but I think, because those QR codes can be shrunk down quite a bit,
Oh, yeah.
can't they?
Yeah, you just, past a certain level, phones start to have a harder time recognizing them depending on the distance. But
What about on the back of the page?
yeah, you can do all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing special to those QR codes. Those QR codes are just a representation of the link that's under them. So you can make your own any way that suits you.
No, this, I love it, I'm just trying to think of, I think it needs to go out with the invoice.
Yeah.
Every month, or for a couple of months. How do we do it without
Right.
going 2 pieces of paper, which is more labor intensive? If we're getting a new machine, I'm assuming it'll duplex print.
No problem.
It'll
Joe, are
prob-
you talking about the invoice for the water?
Yeah,
Okay. I was gonna say, yeah, that's a really good idea because there's probably about 30% of the people in this city that they don't even know how to do any of that.
So the other good thing about this is, like, in the course of the emergency, we can send to this from our phones or iPads or anything else we don't know. The blessed senders can just send an email and it will go. Jess could pull up his phone, type in a few things and hit send, and it'll just go out. There's no login, there's no anything, it'll just work.
I'm hands off.
The other thing with this that I hope to be able to do is once we get some people subscribed, we can also do some automations with this. So I can make it so that anytime Joe posts a Facebook message, it can automatically go out to the info email address. Also, every time that we, from the official city account, is to be clear, not talking about his business lunches and soccer.
I was gonna say, he's the one
Different
trying to
account.
sell
He was
it.
rolling his
different
eyes.
And also, we can make it so that whenever the YouTube stream turns on, it will send out a notification to people to say, we just started, we're live, here's the link. So there's some things we can do to help. This should dramatically increase what people are aware of in our town. I think the temptation will be to over communicate with it. We want to be careful because, again, if we make too many people upset about how much information they're getting, they'll just unsubscribe and leave, and then we don't have anything at all. So we need to be listening to feedback. and try and hit a balance there where, and again, that's part of why we have two lists, to make sure to break it out properly and to try and get people into the groove that they want to be in with that. But that should help. The last thing that I wanted to mention, and then I'll be done, is some of the shortcuts that we have at Harrington City. So, and these are shortcuts. These are not hostings. I want to be 100% clear about that, because if a person thinks that we're hosting pages for the organizations or whatever that I'm about to list, it could spawn a whole new list of questions. We are not hosting a single page, a single word, no content whatsoever. This is just a shortcut that we're saying, hey, we own Harrington.city. It is a nice, memorable name that's easy to type in. And so we can make a shortcut for you that you type in something easy and it redirects to your page. So for everyone's benefit, I just wanted to mention a couple that might be relevant. So Airbnb.harrington.city shows you a search of Airbnb for the Harrington area. Of course, we talked about alerts.harrington.city takes you to the sign up page for that. Biz.harringtoncity takes you to harringtonbiz.com. As does business.harrington.city. Catholic.harringtoncity takes you to the Catholic Church's page. Chamber.harringtoncity takes you to the Chamber's Facebook page. Email.harrington.city takes you to the webmail login, so that's pertinent for the council members and the library board members. Foodbank.harringtoncity takes you to the Facebook page for that. Golf.harrington.city takes you to the Harrington Golf Course. HCC.harrington.city is for the community church. Library.harrington.city takes you to the state library page for Harrington. Map.harrington.city takes you to the Google Maps page. Methodist.harrington.city takes you to their webpage at umc.org. Nazarene.harrington.city takes you to the Nazarene Church Facebook page. Opera.harrington.city takes you to harringtonoperahouse.org. Post.harrington.city takes you to the federal webpage for our post office here. School.harrington.city takes you to harringtonsd.org, which is the school's website. upc.harrington.city is for the United Pentecostal Church. Wiki.harrington.city takes you to the Harrington City Wikipedia page. And youtube.harrington.city takes you to the city's YouTube channel. And Zillow.harrington.city takes you to a search of Zillow for the Harrington area. That's it.
So if another organization said, hey, here I am.
Yep.
you
And
can-
it costs us nothing. It just takes me a couple seconds. Literally, I can make a new shortcut in about 15 seconds. And I could give permissions to Joe or other people to make ones as well. We're not endorsing an organization. We're not paying a single cent to host for them, because we are not hosting a single file, a single word of content. It's more like if someone was to show up in here and say to Jerry, hey, do you guys have a blah, blah, blah organization here? Oh yeah, you should talk to so-and-so. He's redirecting them to the person they should talk to get more information. He's not endorsing them. He's not holding a brochure for them. He's just giving them information and redirecting. That's all this is a website. It's just taking the benefit of what we have at Harrington.city, and it's just making it so it redirects to everyone's specific pages. So, and I know that with the chamber, they're redoing their website stuff, and they might be hosting pages for more organizations in town. We could make shortcuts that just point over there as well. And a lot of these organizations will never probably even care that I made a shortcut for them, and that's perfectly fine because I was willing to waste that 15 seconds. So,
Can you do rural resources?
sure, make me a list, and I'll make me a list of what you want before the .harrington.city and where it should go, and I can dump those in.
Nice.
Thank you for bearing with me. I believe that was my update.
Okay, I have one more issue. I was contacted by the library board and they asked me if they could have the key that our former librarian had. And my comment to them at the moment was no. And the reason for that is we have a security issue in here that I'm not gonna go into, because not everybody needs to know what it is. We have ordered parts to solve that security issue that should be here. Is it next Wednesday they're coming in?
I think so.
So that was my reason, and I said I would bring it up to the city council because this is not only the library, but it is also the city hall. So there's lots of information in here that is public.
If they're,
Open to the public if they go through the proper channels, but it's not here for anybody to come and look at
right.
without going through those proper channels. So I leave that up to the city council to make that choice, whether they agree with me.
Would we have a place to lock up computers if we bring them in, like that one there? You're gonna have kids running through here.
Well, this wouldn't be a thing with kids running through here at the present moment. I know, they wanna come in here and work, for instance, on the weekend, not during core hours when we have a city employee here. That's my concern. So I said no, and I said I would bring it up at the city council because they can overrule me
So
on
the
that one.
current plan is that as soon as those parts arrive and are installed, that they would receive a key.
I would think so for certain things. Now, I don't know that we ever opened the place up on the weekends, whether the former librarian did or not. So those are questions they want to come in here and work, and I couldn't answer that question. There is sensitive information in here, and the people that are going to be here with the library board, I have no concern about, but it's
Is there a way to secure that information?
not today, there's not.
Okay.
Well, aren't there other places around town that they could have meetings?
Well,
I-
it's beyond the meeting. They wanna come in and start working
Yeah.
to organize the books. And they wanna do that on the weekend.
Oh,
So,
So my question is, like I said, unfortunately, this is the city hall also, and there are things all over in here
Yeah.
when the city hall's not, when there's not an employee here for the city.
Well,
That,
when I was in the service, you wanted to charge your phone, you had to make sure you didn't plug it in the computer because it would download the information on the computer. Computer didn't, yeah.
so my opinion is everything that you're saying. It's, there is unsecured, I mean, the only thing that, I shouldn't say unsecured, but there's confidential information in this office. It is secured by the fact that the building is secured, right or wrong.
by an individual.
Yeah. And to absolutely prevent any implication of how did that get out, I think it's just the safe way to go until we can get that secured.
well, when we were going through all these books, we always did it like in the afternoon.
During
We were out
core
here.
hours of the city.
Yeah, well, we were out of here by 5:30, you
Yeah.
know, so that was a little bit
Yeah,
longer,
but
but from 3:30 to 5:30.
I fully understand their need to get in here
Absolutely.
and do this, but I think the confidentiality of the citizens of the city right now takes precedence, and you've already taken steps to secure that. It's just not gonna happen as soon as their timeline. So, I think you're spot on.
Unless you're gonna pay Jerry a lot of overtime money when they wanna come in at night.
I already saw how much overtime he got on the last library board meeting, so,
Well, I got a hypothetical. If, I don't think a librarian's gonna be happening right like tomorrow or whatever, but I know there is work to be done. But if there is a librarian, like in a week or two or whatever, are you guys gonna prevent them from coming in here?
I wouldn't. I think as soon as we have the parts issue taken care of, they need a key and they need to have access to it whenever they want to have access to it. I look forward to a day where there's not the conjoining of the city and the library.
I agree.
But And while that is still the case, they have not only the right, but it looks like the legal precedent and requirement to have access to their buildings, so.
Yeah, we voted the resolution.
Right, so, and not just that, we want them
Yeah.
to have autonomy and a desire to want to form the space. That's the whole reason why we set a new library board in place and stuff, is to build it into something. We want them to have that ownership and energy there. So I wouldn't want to see that taken away from them. As soon as we can get them in here, when we don't have that issue on board with the parts, which should be hopefully a week from today, unless anything supply chain issue pops up.
But
So
I think another concern would be if Jess is on the phone with whoever he's on the phone with for city business, and we have a disgruntled town person coming in here yelling and screaming.
that,
He needs to have an office, I'm sorry.
well,
I think we've dealt with that in the past couple days here.
Oh, okay.
Not for the office, we're just going to call the sheriff. Irate people are not tolerated. You can come in here and be civil, and we'll speak civil back to you. Otherwise, we're gonna call the sheriff.
Yeah.
This is not the kind of times when we can have irate people in the city hall or anywhere else.
No.
And there are other avenues that the council is in process on to see if we can get an actual office and some separations. At least,
good.
Maybe we can expedite that.
Win the lottery.
there are plans, we can, there is a plan in my mind, and I've discussed with Joe and David, to go between here and an open discussion in the council, so.
So let me give you a hypothetical. We get our security issues fixed here. We take care of it, that's all taken care of. 2 weeks from now on a Saturday, they decide they want to have a group in here and kids coloring or whatever during non-city hall hours. Is that okay with everybody?
It's okay with me, but only because I know how I intend to vote on a solution to separate the city from the library.
Okay, I just,
As long as they
this has
stay over
nothing to
there.
do with, this has nothing to do with the library board themselves, it would be other people, so if they wanted to open this place.
I think to answer your question, I would support Stephen on that answer, but a lot of it was the board themselves.
Right,
It's not,
I
it's
get
not,
it.
it's not gonna be a public free-for-all. You know, like out on the street, come on in, have
No.
cake, you know, that
Right,
type of thing.
right,
They have a ton of books and
absolutely.
yada yada, and the librarian's gonna have a handful too, so I mean, they're, it's business, not a social hour. And unfortunately, that's the way this was set
And
up.
if you have it open, even if they're working in here, there are people that are gonna wanna come in and
I
have that.
think they can lock it. I don't
Well,
thi-
yeah, they can lock
They
it,
come
but
in
you're,
all the time.
you know,
I don't think it's open.
ask Jess how that works.
What's that?
People trying to come in when you're here and the city is closed, city office is
On the
closed.
weekends.
Yeah,
Well, a
Phone
COVID
lines.
quarantine sign on the door would work.
yeah, it would.
Monkey bar.
Okay, well,
Budget meeting in process.
can
No,
you
I-
pass on that information, will you? Okay, and as soon as I have that solved, then the rest of the council's in agreement to pass on the key to the library board?
Yes.
Once our security issue is solved?
Hard for me to decide. I don't know what the security issue is.
I can't bring it up right now because I don't want it known. I would be glad to talk to you after the meeting.
Jess, are you talking about every person on the board having
Peter.
a key or?
No,
just
no,
a
just
no,
one,
no.
general
just one,
key?
just one key. And it will eventually be the librarian's key is what it is. The librarian has to be able to get in here and leave at night because the librarian,
Marcia Womack's key.
so,
Yes.
yeah.
So she can get out of here after business hours.
Correct. So, yeah, at the present moment, we have a special situation that hasn't always been here, and I don't want to say it because I don't want it publicized. But once we've solved that issue,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I'll
yes.
agree.
yeah, and I just think as far as programming is concerned, to give to your scenario, I think the library board and the librarian needs to be sensitive to the fact that this is a professional city space.
Yeah, we'll pass that on. I don't see a problem. It wasn't a problem with the people, it was just a problem in general.
Right.
Well, I think some of the things have been lackadaisical because councilman, anybody, the only two people back there should be Jerry, the clerk, and the mayor
Yep.
at all times. You know, and for the most part, I think it's respect. Well, I'm not here every day, but I mean,
Yeah,
unfortunately, and it's design and stuff too. I don't know but that's the way it should be. People should view that as with some respect.
We could build a wall.
Well, you put up those things like they do in shopping malls or strip malls that the chain thing comes down.
That's already been discussed.
Yeah. I heard it.
Dome of silence.
Talking about building an office.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you were gonna have him over at the town square,
Well, the
weren't you?
cone is,
His office on the
No,
street.
right in the coordinated building. No.
Any other input?
No. Levi, you're on.
Is there anybody from the public who has anything they'd like to say?
Can I be the public?
You can be the public. You're up.
To adjourn. Move to adjourn.
And is there a second?
Sure.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. It's 8:45.
Good night, Levi. Thank you.
Good night, Levi.
time.
Did he say yes?
You're welcome for everything.
Yes.